Hey, Louisa.
It's good to be here with all of you. I came here the first time in July, and that's kind of the only other time I've been at this meeting, sort of mid July, because my former boyfriend had died on his 60th birthday of alcoholism. Uh, I don't know if you know about OSAT, but I was climbing mountains and met him there, and he was sober. And he told me, he couldn't drive his car because he had a third DWI, and his wife had kicked him out. But that's kind of normal, right? It's like red flags for other people, but for us, that's like a newly sober alcoholic. So anyway, I was very in love with him, and things kind of went up and down and up and down, and then it became impossible for me to deny any further that he was drinking and cheating. And so I left him in 2015 and was always hoping he'd get sober. Um, anyway, I have his last texts with me are at the end of June, so he had like 10 days left to live, and he said, I haven't been able to figure out the God thing, uh, or find a sufficient substitute. And that's pretty much his last words to me. Then he had a gastric hemorrhage alone in his house, and he bled to death on his 60th birthday alone in a beautiful setting on Whidbey Island. I mean, a house that looks out at these fields and hills and trees. It's right by the Green Bank Farm. And he had just retired from bowling. He had a pension that would go on forever with plenty of money. He had a whole life ahead of him at 60. But when he stopped working, he had no reason not to drink. And 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 what I feel, he says he didn't have a sufficient substitute for a higher power, but what he could not do was connect with other people. He was on the spectrum. So he had gone to treatment. I had gone to see him in treatment. He had a big binder with all of this stuff in it and all of these things. And I said, well, I hope I'm going to get him in someday. And he said, I'm going to do it the right way. He was very, very excited about the program. But he could not get himself to go to meetings. And when he went to meetings, he could not connect to people. So he died of terminal uniqueness. And each of us here has terminal uniqueness. It is part of alcoholism. It is almost the driving factor. So really learning that I am a part of a we has been the biggest gift this program has given me. I'm a part of a we in my circle of friends, in my AA community, but also just with humanity and also just with everything that lives. I am part of that, but I didn't feel like. So I was born in Seattle, at what's it called, Swedish Hospital on Capitol Hill, and my dad was a professor at the university, and my mom was a docent at the museum, and I was very happy until I was about 4. And that's when you begin to realize there's something wrong. There's something not real here. People don't talk about real things. There's this kind of gloss over everything. And I began to recognize a pattern that, like, my parents thought it was really cute to give my sister and me alcohol. They liked to get us drunk with a small amount, And I just remember many times in the morning, primarily Sunday morning, because my dad would make the pancakes and I wanted to help him. And just feeling like, what, last night we were laughing, it was all tickling and play and just so much giggling and fun. And now he won't even look at me. What did I do? What have I done that he is so mad at me now? And I have this memory, it really breaks my heart, of looking in the silverware drawer because he had told me to get something. And I just, little kid, looked in the silverware drawer and just racked my brains. How can I turn him back? into the happy guy he was last night. And that is called codependence. And that is kind of a second half of alcoholism. Um, so I'm sure a lot of you know that feeling, just that there's something wrong with your family, that there's something not right. And I tend to think more families are dysfunctional than are not, but each has its own unique way of being dysfunctional. So my parents' way was just telling me, we are wonderful, we are happy, we love you so much, they would say, but they both were kind of came from messed up childhoods themselves, so they just weren't really there emotionally to love. So I just did really well in school as a way to try to please them. And I really was very, very unhappy in alcohol in high school. I don't know why I said that. In high school, I just could not connect with anyone. I just really had no social skills. Everything was kind of pre-acted, um, in my mind, and so nothing ever goes according to your plan of how the conversation is supposed to go. So I would have like the wrong script for whatever situation I was in, and I just couldn't talk to people. So I was incredibly lonely, and that's when I developed so much self-loathing that I remember thinking, that I really wanted to die. I wanted to kill myself, and I went to see the counselor at the high school to tell her, and I just chickened out, and she saw my grades. And so she's like, well, it looks like you're doing great, Kate. Bye-bye. She pretty much just said bye-bye. And I just remember walking out of there and thinking, you can't even tell a fucking counselor, that you want to kill yourself. And she's impatient to have cooler people come in. Basically, that's how I felt. So when I went to college, I decided nobody was going to know I got good grades. And that's when I was able to drink. And man, it was a whole different ball game. All of a sudden, I had the right script. All of a sudden, I discovered I was a pretty girl. All of a sudden, I discovered I didn't really have to say much even, it all worked at parties with loud music, and it was all fine. And so I remember, trying to do an exam when I was so drunk that I was seeing double, and just so hungover. And I also remember exams where my biggest concern was I going to have to hurl? Was I going to have to jump up and leave and go hurl? But I got through okay. And then my story has this in this, and I hope it doesn't bother anybody, but after graduation, I went to live in New York City, and I went to a bar or actually a nightclub with a friend who was a coke dealer, and we did all his coke, and I wanted some more. I didn't want to come down, so we bought some from a guy, and it did nothing. It numbed our gums, but it was gone, and we were coming down, straw in hand. And so my friend, who was the dealer and kind of a connoisseur, he said, I don't want any of this. And I thought, well, it numbed our gums. Maybe if I do the whole pile, I'll get a little bit high. So I did the whole pile, and it killed me. It was lidocaine. And I got lidocaine poisoning, and my heart stopped, and I had a grand mal seizure and cardiac arrest that went on for 3 minutes. The bartender came out and did CPR, but meanwhile, I went somewhere. That's another story for another time where I went. But when I came back, I was like, that had to have been a hallucination. It didn't feel like a hallucination, but it must have been a hallucination. Because if that was God and stuff, then I have to go to church. Fuck that. I'm not going to church. Yeah. I want to keep doing what I'm doing, so therefore that was not real. And I just shoved it aside. I did get very depressed, however. And I went on trying to live my life. And really, for me, my number one high, aside from alcohol's my favorite, then cocaine, then infatuation. Infatuation is a wonderful drug. It is natural cocaine. Your brain makes it. All you have to do is take a person, put them up on a pedestal, put the magic cape on them, and then everything has to do with them. And when they like you, you get this burst of this fabulous endorphins and I don't know what all, but it sure feels good. And then maybe in my case, I married one of them, and turned out that like he farted. Turned out that like he could be really boring sometimes. Turned out that the cape came off when I married him. So what do? You find a new one, right? And so in my case, then I jumped tracks to same-sex relationship and went through the whole thing and won this woman's love, and she moved from Boston to Seattle to be with me, but then turned out she farted. and she was just an ordinary person. I mean, she was very Asian, delicate, beautiful woman, but she was just, there was no more magic, So I did it again. And at this time, I lived in Olympia, and I fell in love with, I was by then 34, and going to Keggers and just getting shit-faced at Keggers with a whole bunch of kids. I'm 34, and I'm like, I've been an English professor back in Seattle, but now I had left that because I got in the way of my brilliant writing career, which was actually my drinking career. But in any case, I was busy chasing this guy, and my partner, the beautiful Asian woman, she read my journal, which was all full of obsessed stuff about the barista boy, and so she took a U-Haul and she just left. And then I was kind of screwed because I had this beautiful log cabin in the country, and I couldn't afford it anymore because I was just a barista, two places. Starbucks and somewhere else, but it still is not going to pay the mortgage, right? And so I was walking down the street, and there was this pretty dyke who would come into the coffee shop, and people used to tease me, pretty dyke likes you, Louisa, she likes you, she gets all nervous when, she likes you. And I was horrible because I thought I was cooler than she was, and I had my barista friends and we just cracked jokes about her. But I was walking down the street, and after my other partner left me, I was so, how when your partner leaves, you're afraid you're going to drink yourself to death. Isn't that how it is for everybody? So you set a 30-day time not to drink just so you don't drink yourself to death like that. I don't think anybody would do that, right? So during this 30-day window, I was walking along in the sunshine with one of my friends from the coffee shop, and we walked past the pretty dyke, and we went, kind of mean girl stuff. And I went a little further, and then something said, go back and tell her you'll go for that motorcycle ride. And I was like, what? It's like, go back, tell her you'll go for the motorcycle ride. And I was like, why would I do that? And this voice is like, well, because then you'll feel the wind on your face and everything will be wonderful. So I went back and asked her, and she said, sure. And that was like a turning point in my life. She was 3 years sober, and she took me to my first AA meeting so I could understand what it was like for her. And she said, but clearly you don't have a problem because she hadn't seen it on the real beat, right? But I got a little taste. I saw this stuff. It scared the shit out of me. Oh my God, it scared me. These people saying they hadn't drunk for years and years. I was like, how do you not drink, you poor person? How do you not drink for years and years? And anyway, so I ended up breaking up with her. The thing with the cool boy from the barista, back and forth, lots of mess. This was when I hit bottom. And this is when I just decided that life just fucking sucked. And the worse I could make it, the more real it was. And the more I could admit that there was no reason to live. I like to read Bukowski, and I just like to just think like, life's just shit. And I wrote in my journal, there is no right, there is no wrong. It's just all creation. So I went to a party and I got really, really drunk, and I kept falling down, and everybody goes, whoa, when you're falling down. And I'd be so annoyed with just let me fall down. It's not a big deal, right? I had kind of rubber bones as an alcoholic anyway. So people took my keys away and they put me in this house and they said, you're going to sleep here. And I got up and I found my keys and I couldn't find the ignition. Couldn't find it. Just felt, found the ignition. Started the car and drove home out to my log cabin, just going 80 miles an hour, seeing triple. I mean, I couldn't even stand up, you know? And I remember thinking, I hope I hit a tree. I hope something happens that I either die or I end up with brain damage so nobody wants me to do anything. I don't have to keep tap dancing because I was just so sick of fucking trying to please people. And I got home, I got out of the car, and I was standing holding onto the door because I couldn't stand. And I thought, man, I am such a badass when I drive shit-faced. And something came from the stars and shot through me almost into the ground, and it was like a bolt of thought that was not mine. And it said, this is the last time I can help you. You do know right from wrong. And I remember that so clearly. And in the morning, somebody had made oatmeal and spilled it all over the place. Somebody had left the milk out, all these things. And I had no memory of that, but I remembered this bridge that I had gone through where I couldn't even see all the railroad signs, and I just shot down the middle and I had made it. And I remembered the voice saying, last time I can help you. So I decided that wasn't real, even though it did sound an awful lot like the voice that had been in my near-death experience, but never mind, can't be real, pushed it aside, didn't want it, tried to keep drinking. But trying to keep drinking when you've got this kind of echo in your mind, you do know right from wrong, really fucked up my drinking. Talk about like poop in the punch bowl. It just wasn't as fun. So I tried to keep going and I just went down. And so I really wanted to commit suicide, but I decided to commit suicide by drinking a gallon of vodka. And I decided on a Sunday in Thurston County. And you couldn't get a gallon of vodka on a Sunday in Thurston County. So the other alternative was this woman had given me the number for AA because I had been so hungover when I went to see her, and I wanted to tell her I was an alcoholic, but I couldn't until I was just leaving. I said I might maybe have just a tiny bit of a little bit of a possible drinking problem. And she had given me a number. She had just scrolled it down because she couldn't find a schedule. I called that number, and the woman who answered the phone was so sweet. And I said, I guess I want to go to a meeting, but I don't want anyone to know me. It needs to be really far out of town. And she said, sweetheart, we can do that. We can find you a place. She called me honey. She was like this sweet grandmother. And I just remember I wanted to cry so much, but I felt like my eyes were just broken. At that point, it's like even your emotions they just won't go anymore. Your brain is so fucked up, you know? So I went to my first meeting and I was by far the coolest person there. And nobody knew I was new, although I did have a little trouble with shaking, and it was a little bit hard to do the coffee thing, you know, and unwrap the candies. And I had no idea that they were all sharing to me. This was on January 29th, 1995. And I haven't had a drink since. I decided it was really stupid and that the 12 steps weren't going to help me, and that really they didn't have an answer. They had a book, they had shit on the walls, and they talked to each other. How was that going to help me? But there was a feeling in the room that I couldn't quite put my finger on, and I wanted some more of that. So I went to another meeting. Sure enough, there was that feeling again. I began to understand that people cared about each other, and for some reason they cared about me, and that was just weird. But there was one meeting where they were talking about God, and this is in Olympia, so they would be like, Jesus, whatever, and I just remember saying, I'm out of here. You know, screw this. I'm getting up. I'm going. I'm getting up right now. right now I'm going to leave this meeting. And it was like my legs just wouldn't work. I just didn't leave the meeting. I couldn't do it. I never did. And when I sat through that meeting, I was kind of like, this is weird. But I said another prayer a while late after that. I tried a prayer. I was out with my dogs, and I said, I don't know who you were when you talked to me that time, but if you will help me with this sobriety thing, I will try to stay sober. And within 5 minutes, one of my dogs was dead. She got hit by a truck. And I moved her out of the road. Remember, I was out in the country. And I thought, I can call the pool boy, and man, will I have a good story. I can make him cry on the phone. I can make him come over and comfort me. It's this great material for the pool guy. Or I could call the motorcycle bike. And I just felt that voice call the motorcycle bike. So I did. And she came over, and we ended up getting married when we couldn't get married, and moved to Seattle. We had a little boy, and then she got crazy, and she left. And this was my first time, little codependent me, being sober on my own. And it was really, really, really hard. And I have a weird story about that too, or I can't tell you the whole thing, but at the end of it, I understood. Very briefly, there was a huge spider that I dreamed about from the period of time when I first met I was calling motorcycle bike. And then the morning when I woke up from the dream, there was a huge, huge spider. And in both the dream and reality, it fell on its back and showed me this beautiful pattern on its belly. And a voice said, diamonds of infinite precision. And it meant even on a spider's belly, there's a geometric design that is perfect. And it meant everything is supposed to happen. So I didn't think much about that until I went to see a friend in AA on her 40th birthday, 50th birthday. I can't remember which it was, but I started, and for some reason, people started talking about clairvoyance, and I said, hey, the dumbest clairvoyant thing happened with this spider. And she goes, that was a messenger. And then she looks at stuff and she goes, wasn't that when you broke up with so-and-so? And I was like, no, it wasn't. And then in the car, I realized it was when I was coming back. And she had shown me like the fates, cut the threads, the spider symbolic for all this. I didn't know it, but when I got home, I broke down and I knew that God was real, absolutely real. God worked in my life. And God had seen me in all my pain, all my hard times, and saw me choose this time to do what was right. I was going to stay sober for my little boy. And I did, go out into meetings and here, I'll just say a big, strong man gave me a hug at a meeting, and I became instantly infatuated with him. So I broke out the infatuation pipe again after all those years. But the infatuation pipe is, if you need it, you need it, I didn't start smoking again, but a lot of people, when they're going through a tough time, they pick up an old thing besides drinking. So I picked up infatuation. And how did I stalk this guy? I stalked him like going to every gosh darn meeting I could go to. And I wanted him to think really highly of me. So I got a whole bunch of sponsees, right? And I speak here and speak there and just impress the pants off of him, literally. I hope. But unfortunately, he was aware that I was in a lot of pain. And so he said, this is not a good idea. So we did mess up a couple times. And we are still very close friends to this day. He lives in Michigan now, but he texted, he wished he were here tonight. Because this is the wonder of AA, is that you can go through that. And now he knew I was infatuated. He knew that I was in pain. Anyway, it all came out with friendship in the end. And he's the reason I joined OSAT, and then I met the boyfriend that I told you just died. And what has happened, I'm going to try to wrap up, is that when I was young and all through my early life, I thought I was the only one that had these problems. I was the only one, and I was somehow defective, and I. And hearing enough people tell your story in AA, hearing enough people tell your thoughts, things that you never thought anyone else would say, you begin to realize, wow, I'm just an alcoholic. And then you begin to realize, wow, I'm just human. And during the pandemic, I was so lonely because my son was at college being very lonely himself. And it was just me and the dog who was kind of dying, so he pooped uncontrollably all around the house. and so I got this dying dog, and it's a pandemic, and we're in lockdown. And I remember just crying and praying to God and just saying, God, I am so lonely. And then God just changed it to, we are so lonely. We are. Me and everybody all around who's in lockdown is lonely. And we're lonely separately together. and understanding that kind of thing is sort of what I bring to everything. So in this past, boyfriend died July 12th. That was his birthday. My favorite chicken, who was 10 years old, Henrietta, she died about a week later. That's actually the hardest death because she was a super charismatic chicken. She was 10 freaking years old. And I had pictures of my son as a little boy holding her as a little chick. And my son is now 23 and she's died, and it was like an era of my home. And then my mom died on August 13th. And she was really sweet at the end. And that's kind of no fairsies, because she wasn't sweet during her life. And she really taught me the importance of being kind, the importance of holding your tongue when you want to say something mean, and just the importance of being gentle. She taught me all of that by doing the opposite. I have so many memories of her being just unnecessarily mean to me. And I don't ever want to be like that. So she was a great teacher in her own way. But she's moved on, and I can tell you she's quite happy about it. She said, came to me once and said, I should have done this a long time ago after she died. So there's more to the story of the voice. I know the voice very well now. He has a name. He talks to me a lot. But that's kind of a different chapter. What I can tell you is that what the voice believes and reminds me of is in these steps and in our way of life. It really does come from God. It really is what we're designed to live as, is in community with each other and helping each other. And going through this tough time, I just went for a walk with an old friend from long ago. And she's going through a lot of the same thing too. So I never feel like I have to go through pain alone. And that's the gift I got from AA. So thanks.
Thanks, Louisa. You should write a book about that stuff.
I should.
She did.